Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stcenturywire.com. And also, we're streaming out on YouTube as well as X and Facebook Live on our fan page at 21st Century Wire on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 524 of this weekly Omnibus News and Analysis radio program. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very important story we're going to share with you. This is an exclusive story. We're going to bring on the reporter who's been working on this. She's also the associate editor at 21stcenturywire.com. Her name is Iara Modarelli, and if you're not familiar with her work, we encourage you to follow her on X. She's going to be sharing a pretty harrowing story, and let me just preface this with an important caveat here. Iara was on the ground at the Valencia floods aftermath. So this is firsthand journalism, on the ground reporting. She embedded herself in that situation there. And what we've discovered is absolutely stunning. We're going to point to you an article at 21stcenturywire.com. Here it is. It's up on our website right now. Exclusive Valencia Flood Scandal cover-ups, corruption, and political failures. We have a number of original images here taken on site, as well as videos, which we're going to share with you. We're going to bring the journalist responsible for bringing this story to us on stage right now. Iara is going to be joining us. Let me bring her up. Iara, thank you for joining us on the Sunday Wire today. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Patrick. Looking forward to breaking this story.
So, firstly, this was a huge story in the news. The Valencia floods. Everybody saw this, especially in the mainstream coverage. Most of the coverage was that this was a huge storm, and it caused total havoc in the area, the city in and around the city of Valencia in southern Spain, and that was pretty much it. People got this idea that it was, a really bad situation, natural disaster, but it seems like there was a lot more going on behind the scenes than what we read in the mainstream. How did you, firstly, Iara, tell us how you got interested in the story, and what prompted you to basically mount your independent investigation, and then we'll talk about your findings as well. We've got a number of images and videos we're going to share with everybody, but go ahead, Iara.
Yeah, I live in Barcelona, and I was prompted to go to Valencia because, we were seeing in the news, like you said, we were seeing the main images. We were seeing the devastation that the floods had left behind, but there was a lot that was left unaccounted for. And so I initially wanted to go there to volunteer to help clear the mud and help any neighbors in need, and also to see for myself what was really going on there. Because as I discovered, and as the days were going by, um, I saw that there was just a complete kind of media blackout, at least in Spain, on what was really happening on the ground. So I organized with the local group of volunteers to get myself over there, not as a journalist at first, but rather as someone who could help on the ground and talk to neighbors and see what was most needed. And then as I spent, even on my first day, as we drove into one of the most affected neighborhoods, Sedaví, I already saw, piles of cars on top of each other. And the first thing I thought to myself was, a lot of this is not being covered. What is being covered instead is everything that, the government has done to so-called help the victims, as opposed to the real devastation on the ground. So I did not see enough real coverage. And so I was prompted to just start talking to neighbors and then figure out what had really happened, and see it for myself.
So just to take a look here at some of the video footage. I know you've got a few of these interview pieces which you have edited. They're up at our YouTube channel at 21stcenturywire.com, also on your X profile as well, some of these videos. Let's bring up one of the main videos here, Iara, and if you could just give us a little preview of what we're watching here before we play it.
Yeah, so this is an interview with a neighbor that I met on my first day, who is completely traumatized after having watched 20 plus bodies being pulled from his daughter's garage. And he tells me that there is no media coverage around these kind of incidents, but that these are very common and that they are seen quite often around these neighborhoods. Bodies being removed from garages, and yeah, we'll go into that in depth if you want me to play it.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear this.
Bueno, a ver, es muy grande todo esto. Gente que ha perdido la vida delante de nuestros ojos, gente pidiendo auxilio que a lo mejor no la podía socorrer, y toda esta magnitud. Ahora, hay que saber que yo no sé si los números son exactos, lo que están diciendo las noticias, porque se han estado sacando cadáveres en sitios por la noche y eso no se está diciendo. Porque no puede ser que en un parking, donde, voy a hablar claro, donde vive una de mis hijas, han sacado muchos cadáveres y los han sacado por la noche.
I was just told by the supermarket owner that 3 bodies were taken out of this supermarket, and the actual body bags are still here. So I'm just coming up here to show you guys the body bags so you can see for yourselves. And they're right here. The body bags.
Y los números no son reales. No puede haber tantos desaparecidos después de 8 o 9 días y que sea siempre la misma cifra de fallecidos.
Me contaste que en el garaje de tu hija sacaron 20 y pico de cadáveres.
Sí, algo así, una cifra así.
¿Y eso lo reportaron? ¿Lo viste en las noticias?
No, eso en las noticias no está saliendo.
¿Y qué ves de la noticia local y también central del gobierno? ¿Los ves por acá contando la verdad o...?
No, la verdad que no. Lo único que hacen los políticos ahora es pelearse entre ellos y, como siempre, tienen que mirar por la gente, por el ciudadano, no tanto teleteatro en las cortes y en donde sea, porque es así. Ahora, con el tema de las alertas, por decirte algo, que esto, que lo otro, yo no recibí una alerta hasta las 8:15, 8:12 de la noche, cuando el agua en mi portal se llevaba los 2 metros.
So Iara, tell us the reports. What were the mainstream reporting in terms of body counts, and then how was that different from what you were discovering on the ground?
Yeah, so the media has been covering this as, you know, around 200 deaths or so. Every single neighbor in the community knows that this is absolutely not true. The numbers that are reported as missing are close to the 2,000 range. There's a lot of controversy around that because every neighbor you speak to has either seen someone get washed away with the floods. A story I heard from a neighbor who told me that she saw a girl being pushed into a street and a car smashing her from the other side. I've seen completely traumatized neighbors tell me harrowing stories of having buried 5 friends in the past week alone. I've heard stories of neighbors tell me that they have friends whose daughter was washed up in a completely different town, which should give a little bit of an idea as to how strong these floods were. Now, something that's really important to mention is that the media blackout is immense. I saw for myself around 20 minutes or so after I left this garage with the body bags still marked that, number one, the government officials are meant to put an S on the garages where they remove bodies, which means sacaron, which means that they have removed effectively a body from this area. And when I left that garage, there was no X present. So number one, that told me a huge kind of, that gave me a big idea of what they're not showing, or what they're not willing to report on, or effectively mark as, which they should. They should mark these garages. People should know that bodies have been removed. And the lower floor of that garage that I went into was still completely flooded. And the supermarket owner said she believes that there might still be bodies. This was 9 days after the tragedies. There are still a lot of garages which are not even drained yet. And the same day that I left, there was a second flood, which again devastated the community, which I didn't see anything being reported on. So what instead I saw was the big outlets like Telecinco and other big Spanish outlets, government-wide, Spain-wide outlets, reporting things like the police marching in the street, no neighbor interviews. And in the investigation, I also link numerous of these media fails. There is one interview where the media stops a local mid-sentence as he starts talking about government failures. This has happened a lot. I even spoke to multiple neighbors who told me that the news wanted to interview certain parts of what they had to say, but then as soon as they became critical and they wanted to address the massive failure that occurred and the reason these floods occurred, which we can get into next, is they're shut down and they're not allowed to really speak their minds on what really happened on the day.
So tell us as well what the general state of mind was of residents. This is a very traumatic event. So as you can imagine, you're doing aid work, ostensibly helping to clean up. People are traumatized. Did you get a sense of frustration, anger, fear of the authorities? What were some of the things that you picked up there when you were talking to people?
All of that. Every single person I interviewed nearly started crying or started crying towards the end of the interview. This is not just locals, but aid workers that I spoke to in the distribution centers. It was a real feeling of abandonment across every single level of government. And I refer to this as Spain's Grenfell Tower moment, because just like with Grenfell, these floods have really highlighted how much these people have been abandoned, not just by the media, but by their own politicians, by their local and central politicians, by President Sanchez and by Carlos Mason, Valencia's president. They feel completely abandoned. They feel furious and hopeless. And they also do feel like the only people that are really on the ground helping them are volunteers. And this is actually something that I'd like to get into next with you, Patrick, because I spoke to a local in also the neighborhood of Sedaví that maybe we can play this later, that discussed with me and showed me his completely devastated home. We were in there clearing mud for hours. There was no electricity. There was no help other than from volunteers. And he was really, really adamant on telling me that he wants the world to know that this is very important, that there are no real institutions on the ground helping. He says, sometimes, you'll see a military member around here clearing the mud with an excavator that volunteers spent all day picking up, but you'll never see the military out here really picking up mud. You'll never see, you'll very rarely see organizations like the Red Cross actually doing their job on the ground. I've actually got a big Red Cross story that we'll talk about later as well. But neighbors want people to know that this is only the beginning right now, and that thanks to the help of thousands of volunteers that have been flooding into the region, oftentimes stopped in their tracks on the highway and having to walk the last bit because they're not let through to the neighborhoods. There's a lot of traffic and so on. These volunteers really go out of their way to go and help on the ground. So he wants people to know that the state forces and the institutions, they're there, but they're there for show. He even tells me that, and I saw this myself too, the military is often seen kind of sitting around, smoking a cigarette, scrolling on their phones, and they're not doing the big legwork. Now, this is also important to mention because of the health hazards that are developing in the region. With these stagnant waters, there are a lot of infections that you can get. Your limbs amputated if you have a cut and you're out there helping. And this has actually happened to people that have lost limbs, that have been amputated because they were in these stagnant waters working without appropriate gear that the military should have, things that the military should do. In all my time there, I was there for nearly a week. I saw a couple of Red Cross vehicles around. I saw a couple of organizations on the ground, but truly in the hundreds, if not the thousands, the main people helping were volunteers, and oftentimes without the proper attire.
And Iara, also, can you, one thing we're going to do, we got a few videos on the system, A, B, E, and F. Can we show any of those videos you've provided?
We can start with the first two, yes.
Okay, I'm going to play this and then give us, I'm going to play video A that you provided, and just tell us what we're about to watch.
I'm actually not sure which one video A was, but we can play it and then I'll just give you the context afterward.
Okay.
Miedo por ellos y salí. Salí, todavía no había nada, pero cuando ya llegué al portal de mi amigo que vive a 2 calles, ya sí que venía el agua con fuerza y le pedí gracias a Dios por haber salvado a mis hijos.
I mean, incredible scenes with the cars piled up. We saw the images on the news of cars being washed down the street, and everybody saw those. We put it on our show post, that main image. But to see it afterwards, Iara, you got a chance to look at the damage up close, and then what was he talking about right there?
Yeah, this was a neighbor who has his house completely destroyed. He got out within minutes. As you know, I need to preface this also by saying that the weather alert came late for those who are hearing this story for the first time. That's the reason why so many lives were claimed here and lost here. The Spanish meteorological agency called IMET issued a weather alert in the morning of the disaster. But the local officials and also the Valencian president, Carlos Mason, they dismissed this the storm. They said they downplayed it, and they essentially said that it would subside by around 6 p.m. of that same evening. Now you see in our first interview I played that one neighbor mentioned that he hadn't received the alert till 8:15 p.m., at which point the water was already at 2 meters height, already devastating everything. So people had received this alert very, very late. Now, the clip you just watched is of another neighbor who lived on the ground floor, lost everything in this flood, and was able to narrowly escape, not because of this weather alert, but rather because his mother lived in a neighborhood up a little bit up that ravine, and in a neighborhood called Benetuser. And she sent him a text message saying, "Get out of your house now, a flood is coming." And so he grabbed his 15-day-old baby, his 2-year-old son, his wife, and himself went to 2 blocks down the road to his friend's house, who lived on a higher up floor. And within minutes, the water had arrived and destroyed his entire home.
So this is a total failure on the part of emergency management of the Spanish government. So that's an obvious one. Did you see any other major systemic failures that you can point out on the part of the authorities?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, on the part of the military, I already mentioned, as neighbors suggest, I saw the same. I saw them kind of sitting around, not doing much. On one of the days I was there, they were clearing a football field and we were helping them. That was one day when I did see them help. And I do want to mention here, which is important too, is that a lot of people in the military and the police and so on and so forth quit their jobs or bypass protocols to go help. This is not an issue of people not wanting to help. The military did want to help, or the people in the military did want to help, but they were often blocked on a more systemic level. So this means that many of them bypass these protocols, and I go through that in the investigation as well, to go help on the ground. But volunteers were definitely there in much larger numbers. They were there in the worst moments. They are still there, and they were there from the beginning, clearing all of this up. So major systemic failure on that level. We'll also later go into the organizations on the ground that are meant to be providing aid, that received millions in donations and are instead monitoring staff in the distribution centers and impeding them from handing out donations. And this was a big story that I uncovered as well.
I'm going to play video clip B here, and we'll talk about this. Here we go.
Si queréis pasar a casa para verla, está todo arreglado, un poquito mejor, pero...
Destruido y vamos a agregar que hay moho negro en la pared también, que es muy tóxico.
So what were you looking at there?
Okay, so this is something that I haven't seen anyone even remotely talking about. The health hazards that are now developing in the aftermath of these floods. So of course, you know, we have to deal with the immediate aftermath, which is still ongoing, which is about clearing bodies out, draining garages and so on and so forth. But for neighbors such as this one who has kids and black mold is growing on their walls, and many, in fact, he himself wasn't even aware of what black mold is. I think it's important to mention that this is just the beginning of potentially the casualties that we'll see around this disaster. We have, you know, the numbers in the hundreds, if not the thousands, of fatalities, which we'll never really know the real number. But if you go there and you speak to the people and you hear every single neighbor telling you that they either saw someone pass away, or they saw bodies, or they saw bodies being removed, it's very, very clear to everyone there that the number is much, much higher than 200 people, and that a lot of people will not even be identified or are already in the sea, have been washed into the sea, and therefore will never be found. In 57, I believe it was, the same area flooded, not to 2 meters, but to around 1 meter. There was actually a plaque that they had in one of the towns that symbolized and showed the waterline of where it flooded back in 57, I believe it was. And the real casualties of that flooding never came out. So I really don't think that we'll ever hear the true scale of the disaster, because it would be ruin for these politicians. It would mean ruin for even Pedro Sanchez, and it would mean that people would actually find out that this tragedy is much, much bigger than they really understand. Now, what you just saw there, and the reason why it was so important for me to show the black mold, and also in the investigation, I show a picture of things growing in the mud on cars, something that we saw everywhere, which obviously means there will be probably respiratory diseases developing over time in these communities. Black mold is extremely toxic, and I earlier talked as well about the stagnant floodwaters, which of course have caused infections, and in the worst cases a couple of amputations. it's important for people to be aware that a lot of the houses, the people that are most affected in the most humble communities, in the most vulnerable communities, often don't have proper ventilation systems in their houses. And so that coupled with the fact that many aren't even aware of what black mold is, because it's not really something we talk about much here. If they move back into those houses with their children could die from this. Elderly people could die from this, and this is the aftermath. And so the lives that this will inevitably claim amongst the most vulnerable communities still after the floods has not even been addressed, nor will it ever. And you won't be able to connect one to the other. There'll be no way. So this was important for me to mention, because the dangers and the health hazards and everything, it's all compounding. We're looking at direct deaths, and we're looking at deaths that will happen over the coming weeks, months, and so on.
Yeah, respiratory disease and complications, so forth, from that sort of thing. It's pretty serious. I'm going to play this video E here, and we'll discuss this. Looks like an aid worker telling a story.
Muchísimas comidas abiertas, como podéis ver, ¿vale? Y Cruz Roja me las quita de las manos cuando se lo voy a dar a la gente. No quieren que demos comida porque hay otros sitios dando comida y porque hay supermercados abiertos y tienen que comprar.
So it looks like, Iara, if I'm not mistaken, just on first look here, there's plenty of aid not being distributed, not
Yep.
being administered properly. Where is she? Who does she work for? And tell us the story.
This was the Poliesportivo, which is a sports center in the town of Sedaví. This is where I slept for those 5 days. On the second floor of the sports center. The center right next to it was the distribution center, full of hundreds of thousands of donations. Every single person in Spain, it feels like, donated to these floods. And this was one of the many, many distribution centers I saw. Now, she mentions in this clip that they want people to start buying their items again, despite there being more than enough to be handed out to every single flood victim in need. They are reopening the supermarkets, despite there still being widespread destruction. And you see this in all of my videos and in the investigation, the level of destruction, the level of horror that is still there. Despite this all going on still, the neighbors haven't even buried their dead yet. And they want them to go to the supermarket to buy food. These are people who have lost everything. And you expect them to go to a supermarket to buy food when there are readily available items. Speaking with another person on the ground, she told me that they are closing down distribution centers, and this was in one of an even worse affected neighborhood. As over the course of my 5 days there, I started walking further and further out to more and more affected neighborhoods. And this neighborhood that I'm telling you about here is Masanasa neighborhood. Many people from Valencia or Spain might know that this is a really severely affected neighborhood. That's the garage that I went into. The lady that I spoke to was the one who had just buried 5 friends that same week. And she told me that across the main road, they had been closing these distribution centers one after the other over the course of the days. It was almost unbelievable. I mean, walking through these towns that looked apocalyptical. There was mud up to my knees, and they're closing distribution centers that have so many donations. And as this Red Cross woman, as I was told by this aid worker, the Red Cross woman in that specific distribution center was monitoring her, walking, following her around in the center and impeding her from sharing or giving out donations. She tells me a story of a man who appeared at the center with a severe sciatica in a lot of pain, that was dragging himself to the distribution center in pain. And when he got there, he was turned away. This aid worker, Marilo Burgos, who I interviewed, is an independent aid worker. She came from another town in Spain just to help, and she was handing out these items to people. Now, what the Red Cross was doing, because they had someone stationed, I'm assuming, in multiple distribution centers. They were definitely stationed in this one. As you can see in the interview as well, the full interview in the investigation, you'll see that the distribution center is huge. Hundreds of thousands of items, everything that people need and more. This man with the sciatica was dragging himself. He was turned away after requesting canned food. And instead, you'll see also that they're meant to supply businesses with different goods, but then multiple stories of individuals, elderly, man in pain, are being told to shop by nearby supermarkets. Meanwhile, the donations are collecting dust, they're getting moldy, and a lot of these clothes and pillows and things that people have donated will be thrown away. And I also show this in the report.
Yeah, we saw the picture of you literally taking the dust off of the donations. So, I mean, a total failure there on the part of the big NGOs, the big names that are supposed to be doing something. It wasn't because they were short of supplies or donations. They just weren't able to perform their basic function, which is pretty shocking considering we're talking about this is hundreds of millions of dollars per year go into this organization internationally. So. If yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, important to mention here that the Red Cross wants you to donate financially to them. They're not really that interested in your material donations. The material donations are gathering dust and they're getting moldy. And so when I asked this aid worker, well, what should people do? They can't, donate financially because there's mismanagement of funds. It's not really going towards those in need. And shall I mention as well that on the ground, I saw maybe 5 or 6 Red Cross cars. And not once did I actually see them hand anything out. I just saw the cars, that's all. And then heard this story about the Red Cross worker monitoring everyone.
We got another video clip here. We're going to play this. Hold it. Here we go.
Mira, todo calle abierto, que lo están grabando. Caja abierta, que aquí en nada tenemos ratones, ratitas, cucarachitas, porque está la cuenta abierta, evidentemente, y no lo dejan darla. Ya hay paquetes abiertos, ya hay, mira esto, con un dedo de poro ya, ¿cómo se lo va a dar la gente? Lleno poro, y no me dejan darlo. No me dejan darlo.
I mean, it's just a total failure, basically. What's going to happen to food's not going to get distributed, basically. It's just going to sit there, and then where's it going to end up? Probably in the landfill, the municipal landfill.
Who knows? I mean, nobody knows where it's going to end up. There's been a couple of kind of tweets made about this, these clothes being thrown out and thrown away, and people wanted to highlight this specifically and say, look what's happening to your donations. They're throwing them away. And then the distribution centers have answered, or these organizations answered, yeah, these were thrown away because they were moldy, and we had to throw them away. Well, they only got moldy because you didn't hand them out on time. So it's kind of a full circle moment that if you to the listeners, if you watch the full interview, you'll see these items getting moldy. And there was another controversial revelation about the Red Cross that I need to mention. Now, this is also up on the investigation. You can see the aid worker telling me how the lady from the Red Cross arrives every morning. She has a look around the distribution center to see what items have newly arrived. What she does then is she makes a bag for
so we got a little
every day. This is someone who's not affected by the floods.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. So we had a little connection issue there, but we've got you back. I want to
Okay.
bring up this image up on screen here. Tell us what we're looking at, Yara. This is
Yeah.
muddy handprints on a wall. This looks like the Consum supermarket. 3 bodies were removed, and so the water sweeps in. There's literally people buried in the lower floors of these buildings. Go ahead and tell us what you saw.
Yeah, so this was the garage that I went into, the clip of which we showed you at the beginning. This was the lower floor was still flooded on this garage, and these were quite striking image of handprints on the walls. You can only imagine what happened in that garage.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Again, this is detailed in your report here. We'll put it up on screen again. We've dropped a link on the live feed on X as well as Facebook Live here. We'll probably try to do the same on YouTube comments, but exclusive Valencia Flood Scandal, cover-ups, corruption, and political failures. I'm going to play another video clip here. This was video clip C, which you provided to us. Let's go ahead and watch this.
Esto tiene que saber el mundo, lo más importante es que gracias a las ayudas de los voluntarios es lo que esto se está sacando, porque ni las fuerzas del Estado ni ningún tipo de institución está haciendo absolutamente nada más que entorpecer, como los policías que están entorpeciendo el tráfico, no dejan pasar, te ponen problemas, te ponen pegas, encima hablan mal. Los militares se dedican a estar descansando, a no hacer nada. Los únicos que están aquí al pie del cañón son los voluntarios que vienen por su cuenta, y gracias a ellos esto está saliendo un poco adelante.
So just to be clear, Yara, you were a part of that team in the hazmat suits clearing up the mud. So presumably we're looking at some of your colleagues there. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're dealing with potential dysentery, cholera situations potentially there. So I realize it's quite can be hazardous work, not just emotionally, but physically as well. So what was he was basically reiterating, I think, what you were telling us earlier, right?
Yeah, correct. He was very, very adamant on sharing this to the world. You saw his house, you saw the destruction that that house was left in, and he was just reiterating to the world that nobody other than the volunteers are helping us. He said the only people who care about us are the volunteers, and you'll never see the military out here really getting into the thick of it and shoveling the mud and handing out food or cleaning supplies or help people get electricity in their houses again. All of this is done by people who come on their own accord and want to help. I think I was cut off a little bit earlier due to connection around the story of the Red Cross, which I did want to really quickly mention, Patrick. The Red Cross, aside from allegedly facing these accusations of withholding the aid from locals, is not just doing that, but I hear from this aid worker that they are also taking items home with them, which was extremely shocking for me to hear. That I was told that the woman from the Red Cross comes into the distribution center every morning, has a look around, and makes a few bags for her to take home. Also takes warm food home with her. That's someone who can just cook at her house. She's not affected by the floods. And but more shockingly, there's a short clip of this aid worker showing 15 mops that had arrived in the distribution center. And she said, the Red Cross didn't let me hand these out because they were useful in their own homes. So taking supplies that people need to actually clear the mud from their houses because it's just more useful for you. That was a pretty shocking revelation for me to make.
Right. So we have we're going to play another video clip in a moment, which you provided to us. But tell us on were you able to pretty much verify through eyewitness accounts, through, I know that you've got some individual anecdotal reporting, obviously, but on a conservative estimate, how big is the difference between the official death count and what you believe is the true number?
I believe the true number is in the thousands. I truly almost certain that is the real number here. There's a policy that the government released that links financial compensation to how victims are classified. So when victims are classified as deceased, it means that the government has to allocate 72,000 euros to each deceased person's family members. But if they are marked as missing, they don't have to do that. From the 20 or 30 neighbors that I spoke to when I was there, every single neighbor either saw bodies being pulled out, saw bodies wash up in the parks or in the different towns, or being pulled out of multiple garages, or saw other horrific scenes. But every single neighbor that I spoke to saw not just one, but multiple bodies. And we have to kind of think about the horrors of that, the PTSD that these neighbors are now going to be left with, the extreme trauma that they're going to have to face on top of everything else. And maybe this is a good point in which we can talk a little bit about Spain's royal decree and take apart a couple of the articles there that they this royal decree, which is to be made a law. They implemented 100+ measures and received or allocated billions of euros to help these flood victims. This decree, when reading it, it's about 60 pages long. It's really interesting. You kind of have to read it thoroughly and examine it thoroughly. And on a surface level, it looks like so many measures to help these people, but really these measures are kind of useless. So I'll go into one, for example. Article 6 in the Royal Decree talks about the Spanish government allocating funds to restore electricity and gas and water and other important utilities to people, but then in the same paragraph requires them to provide a bunch of different documents to prove that the supply was for their residents. Now, Patrick, am I crazy, or are people who just lost their everything, including people's lives in floods, not able to go back to have the presence of mind to go back and grab documents for the government to be able to help you in the aftermath? I mean, completely ridiculous. Same with a different article that I looked at that again only accepts certain documents as proof of ownership for fixing people's houses or personal injuries, property damages, and other. Now, aside from people not having these documents, the Spanish bureaucracy is very slow. So even if somehow they can gain access or regain access to these documents, it's going to take months, if not longer, for them to access these funds. And to make matters worse, of course, all of these companies are probably handling an avalanche of requests and claims from different people. So you're putting the most vulnerable in a position where those who need it the most are not going to be able to access the aid. Those who haven't had their entire properties destroyed might be able to access some aid, which is great, but the most vulnerable people, the most severely impacted by the floods, are the least able to access the funds from the central government. So we're going to see if this is just a smokescreen to kind of give an illusion that the government is helping, or if they'll actually put in measures to help.
And just give us also some idea of the number of people displaced from their homes. Did you get any sort of an indication of this based on what you've read and seen on the conservative end, of course? But do you have any idea on those numbers of displaced persons that aren't able to
Thousands.
return to their home?
Thousands of people are displaced. A lot of people are living with neighbors. One thing that this tragedy has done is it's brought the communities together. So a lot of people are hosting anyone who needs it right now. This neighbor, particularly that I spoke to, that lost his residence, is living with a friend. Others have to leave Valencia completely, move out, move to a different town also. But the ones that are still there, that have either lost their businesses or their homes, their entire livelihoods, they're usually being hosted by the community themselves. So they're kind of left to fend for themselves, right? Because they're not going to be able to access the aid more than likely. And if they are, it won't be for quite some time still. And those who have lost everything are now left to fend for themselves. Other neighbors who have maybe not lost as much, but also lost either people or material possessions, like their cars or so, to the floods, are now left in a position where they have to look after the community because the community feels abandoned.
Here's another video clip we're going to bring up on screen here. We'll get your comments and just describe what we're looking at here, but here it is.
Aquí no tienen nada que ver ninguna institución, ni el gobierno, ni nada, para que todo esto se arregle. Sí, claro, viene el ejército y te empuja con una máquina excavadora todo lo que tú vas a amontonar en los voluntarios, pero no verás a uno del ejército quitar cosas, no verás a uno del ejército darte algo de comer, no verás proporcionar carchers para limpiar, alargadores por si no hay luz en este sitio que lo de otro sitio lo traiga, mascarillas, todo eso lo verás en la gente voluntaria, no verás en ninguna institución. Gente voluntaria es la única que se preocupa, abre su furgoneta.
So power outages, I assume the city sewage system is probably not functioning. So you've got that. So fresh water, potable water, you've got all of these. It's a total disaster area. And this is one of the biggest cities. If it's one of the top, so it's the third biggest city in Spain,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. But what were we looking at there in those scenes, Iara?
Yeah, I mean, what else can you add to that? It's the sewage systems are completely overrun. Every single one that you walk past is, in fact, we weren't able to clear mud out of many areas because the sewage systems were full, and that's where we were kind of, we were grabbing water and clearing the mud and then pushing that into the sewage systems. But you can't really do that anymore because they're flooded, they're full. So there's nothing left to do there. Electricity, most houses don't have electricity, so you're going in with a little lamp on or a flashlight into these places and trying to clear mud in a completely dark place is not exactly a fun endeavor, and also dangerous in many ways. Yeah, it's what he says. You won't see the main institutions that are supposed to be there to help. You won't see them helping nearly a fraction. You won't see them do nearly a fraction of what the volunteers are doing, who are really getting their knees into the mud and are clearing everything out one day after another.
And one of the, you can tell us a little bit about this detail, because I think this is just shocking. And I'm not sure if you go into too much detail on this in your report here, but the Spanish government is offering loans to people rather than cash and aid to get things back on their feet. They're giving out loans. Is this really happening?
Monetary loans, from what I've seen. I haven't looked too deeply into this, but I did see when I was there and heard from several neighbors that they are getting loans. But these are loans that, of course, will have to be repaid in due time, and interest will accrue on those loans. And as interest accrues on those loans over time, the neighbors are left worse off than they were to begin with. So how is this really any help? The loans, but then also the we look at the money that they're apparently going to give via this royal decree, if you have the right documentation, is 60,400 plus euros per residence that was completely destroyed. So, of course, that's not the real price of a house in this economy. It's much more expensive. So that's not gonna really allow neighbors to rebuild fully. You have to also think it's not just that you have to clear out mud from a house or whatever. These floods ravaged entire communities. They tore cars, crashed into walls and completely destroyed them. I mean, you saw this very briefly in one of the clips, but 60,000 euros to fix your entire residency, which on top of that is infested with black mold and more, that's not going to cut it. And that's for a completely destroyed residence. For a partly destroyed residence, they are handing out 20,000 euros. 14 billion euros were allocated to the government, 18 million plus to the Red Cross. Where's the money? And why isn't it being allocated to those who need it the most? It's not. And they're not going to be able to rebuild their lives anytime soon, especially the most vulnerable.
That is a lot of money. I mean, you'd think that you'd be seeing some visual evidence of that level of money on the ground, but according to what you're telling us, Iara, it's just not there.
It's not there. It's not there. Like I said, I saw a couple of Red Cross cars. I saw another organization called Caritas, which is well known here, and in fact heard a story of one of my volunteer friends that I met there going to pick something up, cleaning supplies, presumably, at the Caritas, which was stationed at a church in the center of Sedaví. And they were ignoring locals and instead handing out items to volunteers. So it looks like they're kind of distinguishing locals from volunteers and then deciding what they will or won't hand out. Now, why would you hand something out to a volunteer over a local who needs it, presumably more than a volunteer? So this is Caritas. You already have the full Red Cross story. It's about a 3-minute package that I put together that's in the investigation as well, that talks about that. And then, we briefly discussed at the beginning of this interview that the supermarkets are reopening. So of course, with the reopening of the supermarkets, there's money to be made. And so let's close down all these distribution centers that people desperately need right now, because they should just pay for their food.
Right. So yeah, forget about the aid. Give them loans and send them to the big supermarket chains, who ultimately will profit from this when everybody else is losing. But I'm going to bring up the piece of the article here, and I think this is quite a strong statement. And you come right out, and I think I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Iara, that the catastrophic floods in Valencia left thousands devastated, revealing major systemic failures, turning this into Spain's own Grenfell Tower moment. Now, that was a disaster in the UK in the summer of 2017. I know that you studied in Britain as well. You've done a journalism degree there. You've also worked on documentaries. You're familiar with the Grenfell disaster. I think that's a very strong statement, but it looks to me like this is much greater, of course, than the Grenfell disaster, but the feeling's the same. Iara, I want you to explain what you meant by this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like on a global stage, this will be less reported than Grenfell. I don't know if it's because I was living in Britain or not, but Grenfell became symbolic of politicians abandoning those most vulnerable. From what I've seen up until now, unfortunately, with I believe more than 1,000 deaths, we're not going to see any accountability from the government. We're not really. This story is kind of just being brushed under the rug, kind of forgotten already. Just another flood, just like Hurricane Helene in the US, which was facing much of these same systemic failures that Valencia is facing. But I fear that this is just going to become another story that's never fully investigated, never fully talked about. And so the community is and will remain abandoned and rightfully feel that anger towards the government for neglecting them in their moment of need.
Yari, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. It's a really important story. Obviously, there's a lot of detail in the report. I'll bring that up on screen again. The headline is exclusive: Valencia Flood Scandal, cover-ups, corruption, and political failures. I think that's an understatement, but there's no other way to describe it at this particular time. But a huge political failure. The question is there going to be a political backlash for it? And is it going to raise the level of scandal? It may do in time as people begin to learn and journalists begin to become interested in what actually happened here. Obviously, you're the first, I think, that's really putting out quite a lot of dissenting information against what's been reported in the mainstream here. So I'm sure there's going to be some interest in this on the Spanish side. One would hope that Brussels or Europe would take some interest in helping out a little bit more as well. But if it's a case of just releasing money, Yara, there doesn't seem to be any guarantee that money is going to actually translate into actual help on the ground. So this is really a story of corruption, is it not?
Yeah, and funnily enough, the Valencian president and Pedro Sanchez were too busy playing party politics to really care about the citizens that were most affected. So much so that the French, what do you call the bomberos and the people that put out the fires, sorry, the word kind of escaped me there, were the first on the ground, actually. French. It's ridiculous.
French firefighters.
Firefighters, thanks, that's the word. French firefighters were the first on the ground before even Spanish. So yeah, that's why the town, every couple of blocks you walk, there's signs that say Perro Sanchez, which means Sanchez dog, or Mason asesino, which means murderer. You see this everywhere. You see everywhere signs of anger towards these politicians that abandoned them. In fact, to one of the first couple of days after the floods, the king and queen visited one of the worst neighborhoods in Paiporta, which is fairly known as one of the worst neighborhoods. And residents were so angry at the lack of a response to the flooding and at the complete indifference in which they were just handling this situation, almost like no empathy, psychopathic almost. Mason, Sanchez, the king, the queen, and people were, they were really, really angry and threw a couple of handfuls of mud at the royals and in kind of a symbolic act of anger.
I want to bring just briefly before we wrap up this segment, Bryan McClain, aka Hesher, host of the Boiler Room, also co-host of the Sunday Wire. Hesher, she mentioned Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. What a disaster this was! You guys saw that. You covered that blow by blow. I mean, what are your impressions here of what you've just heard, Hesher?
Well, first of all, it's yet another story about a natural disaster that is just, bone chilling. And, it's like, why every time now when we have a oversized natural disaster, is it covered up? I mean, this does not make sense. Why is the control of the narrative more important than the thousands of people that have potentially lost their lives and everyone that remains? I mean, why? We saw this in Lahaina. We see it in North Carolina. We see it in Florida. We saw it at Grenfell Tower. East Palestine, Ohio, Georgia. Some of our chat members are talking about how TLAB has been talking about the burn off of dioxins in Georgia and how the EPA is covering that up. I mean, what is going on here? It's like, if it was just one of these places, right? I could understand. Okay, they weren't ready. That's a massive failure. But if that's the case, it should be in everybody's minds, it should be the media's responsibility to report the truth. And I'm talking to you, mass media cartels, like it should be your job, right? To make sure that the world sees what happened there and that the world can mourn the mass loss of life. That we still don't know how many people perished in Lahaina. And it's going to be the same here, I would argue, because entire family units were washed away, are gone. In some cases, there's no one to report a missing person when everyone that they know is gone. So it's like, why is it more important to the mass media and those that control the mass media to lie to the people? It's one thing to lie, a lie of omission, to not say something, but this is next level up. This is a flat out lie of numbers, statistical facts that change everything. And it's like the more people that see it, the more people that would donate and help out. But again, these things keep happening. I named off just, a couple handfuls of places where things like this have happened. And I mean, the money doesn't go to the people. Look at Lahaina. They give people in Lahaina $700. Are you kidding me? Have you ever stayed at a hotel in Hawaii? $700 is like one night at the hotel and a round of groceries, if you can even find any groceries. And you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And we see emergency workers, NGO workers, getting the hotel rooms, getting the bottles of water. And then there's this whole this concept of like active denial to volunteers. I can't believe this. Like not only are these agencies that are receiving money, people's taxpayer dollars and donations, not doing what you would expect them to do in a situation like this, they're actively denying citizens from helping each other out. It's just insane to see all that food sitting there. Or in the case of Lahaina, to see the black tarps put up around the entire city and it being made illegal to even take a photograph there. I mean, folks, you don't know how lucky you are that we have Iara here with us, because you're not going to see these photos elsewhere. And if she had been in Hawaii, she could have been arrested for trying to take those photos. You can't even fly a personal drone, a consumer grade drone, anywhere near Lahaina. So it's like, and Grenfell, I'm glad you brought up Grenfell, Patrick, in the title, because some people don't even know what happened in Grenfell, and we'll need to go back and listen to our coverage of what was going on then. Again, a massive loss of life, a massive failure. Early warning systems fail.
I can't help but think, Hesher, the amount of money that goes into central government these days. I mean, it's just ungodly sums of money. And it seems like central government, big government's getting less and less efficient. And it seems like that money is just making its way into all sorts of different pockets. And when it comes to the crunch, when the thing actually happens, when it's all hands on deck, they can't perform. Yeah. And all of these agencies, all of these different committees, all of these different facilities that are very expensive, and all this training, endless training upon training, and getting all these specialists in, and then you have a total failure when the actual moment arrives. And the amount of money environmentally and for emergency management, so much has been siphoned in the last 20 years into climate change and anything to do with CO2 and climate change. It's at the expense of pretty much everything else. And so that's a potential problem that might occur 200 years from now, according to some computer models. And yet we have actual disasters, toxic waste, pollution, stuff that's actually killing people, that's happening regularly, and they can't. They say we don't have the resources for it. We need more money. Iara, you want to comment on what Hesher said?
Yes. I mean, on a couple of things there. I mean, first of all, because these floods had happened in 57, the government was very aware that they should not build more underground garages, yet they didn't take action. This is a very flood-prone area, not in the way that it flooded this time around, but every now and then, you know, you have a little bit of water piling up from heavy rainfall. But they were made aware a long time ago. We're talking about 70 plus years, that the infrastructural design of these towns needed to change. What did they instead do? Created an area in Valencia where, you know, the poorest, the most vulnerable moved to, cheaper residency there, and so on and so forth, and did not address this issue. And on the point of why, and the media manipulation and the lies and the cover-ups, and the cutting people off when they're trying to criticize rightfully their government for neglecting them completely. Absolutely. I mean, right. We had a couple of reports on the media that first had the number stand at around 220 people or so, and then later revised it down. How can you revise a number down? How can you do that on a live broadcast, right? So downplaying the tragedy. Then we had people getting cut off mid-interview if they said something that wasn't, you know, positive towards the government. We had journalists that were kind of just using neighbors for their tragic horror stories and then cutting them off. Again, we had another journalist who literally covered himself in mud before a live report, bent down on his knees, covered himself in mud, got back up and said, "I'm ready." And that's on video, and that's in the investigation. You can see it for yourself. We also had other controversies around outlets that from big outlets like Telecinco, actually specifically Telecinco here, that reported that the military had been responsible for cleaning the local streets. Complete lie, because it was the volunteers. I actually spoke to the neighbor in the street that this happened. The reporter was stood outside. This was a neighbor who was handing out food and cooking warm food for people every day. He saw the reporter from Telecinco stand outside with a microphone and say, "Oh, the military's been here cleaning the streets." And he said, "You're lying. The military wasn't here. It was the volunteers and it was the neighbors who cleaned this. You are lying." And her response, "Sorry, that's what I've been obliged to say." So why? Because they're obliged to, because their government obliges them to, their paymasters oblige them to, and they have absolutely no ethics or morals in their journalism, because they are not interested in true journalism. They are interested in collecting the check. And all of us who have maybe once worked in mainstream journalism know that there is a lot of money to be made as a journalist working for a big outlet. There's not so much in independent, real, true journalism. But who do the algorithms pick up? These people. That's why I mentioned earlier that 20 minutes after I left a flooded garage with body bags still there, I see the big outlets waiting where? With their little microphone and camera? Where the police is about to march down in the street, so that they can report that, oh, the police is here helping. Oh, the military, look at them parading and marching down the street. Ridiculous.
Yeah, they're looking for that money shot, that the government officials will be happy, and it just sounds like there's a lot of corruption, a lot of propaganda, quite frankly, and this coordination between the state and the mainstream media. Big problem in Spain, as it is in many countries, but particularly bad here. I'll have to say, Iara. I mean, this is one of those moments where if you're working in the press, you know, you've got to sort of, this is your chance to do something really useful and positive, and it seems like they just completely dropped the ball right across the board. You interface with mainstream media while you were there as well, so you can testify to the fact that they just weren't really covering the real stories there. We're glad that you were there. You took a great risk, personal risk, Iara, for yourself, and with the limited resources that we have available, that you have available, to make sure this story gets seen and heard. Just think of what the mainstream could do if they were actually doing their job. But you've done a tremendous job here. We'll put your report back up on screen. Folks, I want you to read this and share it. This isn't the last installment of this story, by the way. There's more. Iara's done some tremendous video reports, some of which are embedded in this article. But there's more to come as well. I know you've got a follow-up piece you'll probably be publishing on this story too. But this really should be a big scandal. I think more will come out, Iara, over time on this. It's just there's going to be that painful delayed reaction. Hesher's nodding because he knows exactly what that's like. That painful delayed reaction where the facts just don't come out quick enough. They want to slow walk it so it doesn't hurt anybody's political fortunes, unfortunately. But again, Iara, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Iara Modarelli, she's also a new associate editor at 21stCenturyWire.com. Done some great reporting already, Iara, on so many important stories, especially the pro-Palestinian demonstrations in Spain. You've done a great job covering those as well, and I think more to come for sure. So again, hats off to you for doing real journalism, Iara, and hopefully we'll get you back on for some updates on this when your next piece comes out.
Thank you so much for having me on. Last words from me are, this is what the Maccabi hooligans were fighting about, or were actually disrespecting during the minute of silence in the Netherlands the other day. This story, these deaths, this is the extent to which Israel will go to when any country stands with Spain, which is a completely different story. But the people on the ground in Spain stand with the people of Palestine and want to see full divestment from any companies that are engaged with or buying or providing any kind of help in this genocide against Palestinians. This story that I just told you guys over the last hour, that's how low they'll stoop. So that's kind of my last mention there. I'll be going back to Valencia soon if I'm let in, and cover the aftermath more thoroughly. I think that's a very important story still to be told, and talk to more neighbors and hear more about this.
Yeah, and you're very, I know you're very emotional, having experienced this yourself, Iara, and a lot of people are just infuriated by those football hooligans from Tel Aviv Maccabi in Amsterdam during what was meant to be a moment of silence for the victims of the Valencia floods. They just carried on and doing disgusting chants and just being completely vile in the Netherlands, and that's one of the things that initiated a lot of the altercations as a result of that. So, I mean, it is even more upsetting seeing that behavior in light of what you have showed us here today and what is in your report, folks. So please support Iara in her efforts. Share this story. We've dropped the links on the LiveX. We'll drop it, I think, done it on the YouTube stream chat as well. As on Facebook Live too. So wherever you're watching this live stream, folks, share this story, get the word out. Iara's done some fantastic work, so we want to make sure that's being seen and read by as many people as possible. Follow Iara Modarelli on X. We've got her link up here in the LiveX stream headline, so you just have to click on that, follow her, and do keep an eye out. She's not only reporting on this, she's doing a number of other excellent reports as well. So you want to definitely support and follow her work. Again, Iara, thank you very much for joining us this week on the Sunday Wire. Great work, by the way. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me and for covering the story, Patrick.
No, that's our pleasure. It's the least we can do. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we're going to bring you Overdrive segment here at 21st Century Wire. Again, I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stcenturywire.com. And I'm going to leave you in the break here with a new track from Joseph Arthur. That's raising a lot of eyebrows, but it is so on point as usual. Great job by Joseph. We'll play this, and we'll see you back in a few minutes.
Brothers and sisters, when being divided, don't believe what they say. Hold on to your soul. Everyone divided in an echo chamber hole, saying that the enemy doesn't have a soul. Listening to me
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to this last segment of Overdrive here on the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stcenturywire.com. Thank you guys for rejoining us. It's a great segment by Iara Modarelli. She's a great independent journalist. She really put herself out to get this story on the ground, going in with an aid NGO on the ground, and what she found and what she discovered as a story unfolded piece by piece. It just got more horrific. She's able to share and document a lot of this, which is up on 21stcenturywire.com. Exclusive Valencia Flood Scandal, cover-ups, corruption, and political failures by Iara Modarelli. She's the associate editor at 21stcenturywire.com. Great independent journalism as well, and we really appreciate her efforts there. This is also coinciding with our winter fundraising drive, which kicks off this week at 21stcenturywire.com. This is our annual fundraiser where we are able to raise money to fund this operation for the next 12 months. We need your help now more than ever. We are putting a lot of resources into independent journalism for this platform. We manage a whole host of audio and video channels as well for this content, and as well as some independent journalism. So again, we'll put some details of the winter fundraising drive up before the end of this program in Overdrive. I'm going to welcome my colleagues onto the stage in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to just acknowledge something that happened to me this week. I want to put this up on screen. I was nominated for a journalism award, the Serena Shim Journalism Award for uncompromising integrity in journalism. And I posted a statement about this on our social media channels as well. And it's a great honor to have been nominated for the Serena Shim Award. And it's something that the committee is a jury of my journalistic peers around the world, some of the best in independent media and journalism. So for that reason, it's obviously a great privilege and an honor as well. But the story of Serena Shim is quite a powerful one. She was a brave young American journalist who was killed reporting at the Syria-Turkey border. She's one of the first people to really blow the whistle on the ISIS fighters coming over from Turkey into Syria. And what a scandal that was on a NATO level, on an international level. Because of her work, a lot of us who have been covering this same conflict later were also able to move a lot better through the big geopolitical themes of this because of what she had documented. And she really put it all on the line and paid the ultimate price in pursuit of the truth. So to be named for this award is, I can't say enough what a great honor it is. And to try to stay true with the ethos and the spirit behind Serena Shim and this great award. So I posted a little more of my insights on that up on social media, so you can read the statements there. But for myself personally, it's been a very challenging year. So this is great encouragement going forward. And as I said in my statement about the award, and again, thank you to the committee for nominating me for this. And it's a great honor to be recognized for your work in independent media. But I believe our most impactful and best work is yet to come. We've done a lot over 15 years, especially with this platform. And there's a lot more that's going to be done as well. And our biggest stories, our most profound stories, and the greatest impact is yet to come. So just watch this space. We are working on a number of great long-term investigations and just day-to-day analysis and punditry. And we're trying to bring you the very best. And we need your help to do that. So it's good timing with the winter fundraising drive. Let me bring on to the stage, firstly, Bryan McClain, aka Hesher. Bryan, great contribution. Thank you for your intervention at the end of Iara's report there. And I can see your absolute frustration. Is how I felt with the Grenfell Tower disaster. And we were able to report on the ground there. But the Sunday Wire did some great reporting with Miles Elliott and some other people. I remember that. I remember those episodes. there wasn't any other. The mainstream wasn't really doing any serious reporting on the ground. It's exactly like Iara is describing with the Valencia floods, and we can extend that to Lahaina and these other disasters that are completely mishandled. So I'll bring Basil Valentine on as well as some international news we're going to cover as well. But before I bring Basil up, your final comment on the Valencia floods and just this topic in general, Hesher.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's maybe one location with behavior like this from government NGOs and media is understandable. But when we're at the point where every time something like this happens, we see the Grenfell media protocol, it makes me sick. It makes me want to retch. I think back to those episodes, in particular, you mentioned Miles, big shout out to Miles. Those were tear jerkers, man. Those episodes literally had audience, writing me and saying I was in tears by the end of that. I was in tears in the middle of that. And it's like, how many of those have we had? We've had so many episodes like that where people were like, gosh, this was a rough one, guys. But why is it so rough? It's kind of like, there's that scientific principle. Like if you lay down on a bed of nails, right, you can put a cinder block on your chest and have someone smack it and break it. But if you're laying on just one or two nails, they will impale you in that same situation. And that's about the distribution of pressure, right? So if the media was doing its job and that sadness and pressure and what do we do, how do we help, all those questions had some sort of wide base, it wouldn't hurt so bad. But when we're the only outlet, like us and TLAV and other independent journalists out there are the only ones that are willing to send someone out there and do real reporting, it hurts. It hurts. And it's when it's all these places, the same thing in all these places, and the narrative is more important than the people and the truth. As Joseph said in his amazing song there, the zombies and dopes, they don't know what's going on. They just don't, and they won't. And this kind of stuff is going to continue. And one last thing, Patrick, before we change topics and bring Basil on, Free and a couple other people in the various chats were asking about the dams. What's going on with all this rewilding stuff?
Yeah.
Why were dams not doing their jobs? I mean, can you elucidate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'll point to the work and lectures of Bjorn Lomborg, the Scandinavian economist. All of this investment in climate change and CO2 offsets. The thing that is totally underinvested in is climate mitigation. That is things like flood barriers, floodplains, just basic levees. I think this kind of I first really saw this complete breakdown with Hurricane Katrina, of course, being from the United States. That's when we started seeing this. But having myself been on the ground reporting the foot and mouth crisis, not during the crisis, but the aftermath of the crisis, talking to farmers and seeing the total devastation and the complete cock up by authorities, but also a little bit of nefarious agendas as well. And this is the problem. So again, we're seeing another example of this, and it is very frustrating indeed, Hesher. So what can we do? All we can do is report the truth. Great that we have great independent journalists like Iara Modarelli that will take that risk and take her time. I mean, I don't know how much time she was on the ground there, but in total, she was on the ground there for a week, totally embedded in the cleanup operation, and also having herself not just doing journalism but helping residents at the same time. And then obviously she spent a week prepping for that, and she's been in touch. And I have to also have my hats off to her. She's following up with the people that she spoke with. It's not just a hit and run job, which is so often the case in journalism. You see people talk to journalists, but they don't ever hear from them again. She's in touch with a lot of the people she had spoke to because she really cares about what's happening to them. So she's taken a personal interest in this case, and I can't blame her for it based on what we've seen in her reporting. So look, we'll keep an eye, wait for her follow-up report on this. It's going to be even more interesting, I think, than the opening salvo here, which we'll put up at the top of our website, exclusive Valencia Flood Scandal cover-ups, corruption, and political failures by Iara Modarelli at 21stcenturywire.com. And so that's the independent journalism that we continue to do. And I'm absolutely honored to be able to facilitate and help support her in her efforts here. And she's great on the Middle East. She's great on conflict. And so this was just another domestic war zone that she's covering there. So let me bring Basil Valentine onto the stage. Basil, come up a little higher on your camera view, Basil. There you are. And joining us from the beautiful Salisbury Plains, which used to be flooded way back when. Basil, I think he's got an audio issue. We're not hearing Basil. Let's bring him up here. Unmute the mic.
Tour, Patrick.
Yes, the tour in Glastonbury.
And you can, if I was to step outside where I am and look which way, west, then I can see the tour.
Yeah, the former
So that's where we are.
floodplains of Salisbury, which have been, the levels were drained hundreds of years ago. No more flooding in Salisbury. Well, at least.
Yeah, everybody's getting very excited about the flooding at the moment. It seems to be getting quite bad. Storm Bert has wreaked havoc. A major incident has been declared in South Wales, for what it's worth. But bigger problems for Keir Starmer. The petition on change.org calling for an immediate general election, which only started yesterday and needs 100,000 signatures in order to be discussed in Parliament, now stands at 1.2 million. Really quite unprecedented. People were amazed when it got past 500,000. It's well over 1 million now, a record number for this type of thing. So it'll have to be debated, but that's as far as it'll go. There won't be a general election. Labour have got a huge majority. There's no mechanism for bringing down a government by people power in the UK. Unfortunately, it just doesn't happen. Turkeys don't tend to vote for Christmas, and any no confidence vote in the government would be very soundly defeated by all the Labour MPs who want to hang on to their seats and their jobs. They've only had them for a few months after all. So nevertheless, it does indicate the depth of feeling and frustration at this new so-called Labour government. It's new neoliberalism on steroids. Last week, Starmer was entertaining the BlackRock chief executive and even posting on X about how important it is for BlackRock to be involved in the British economy. People are afraid he's going to sell off what few remaining national assets we have, like the National Health Service, to BlackRock. Plus, of course, we've supplied the Storm Shadow missiles to strike deep inside Russian territory. So, we could be on the brink of World War III. He made absolutely beyond disgraceful remarks about events in the Middle East. Now, of course, he's as a fully paid up accomplice to Israel's international war crimes. He's on the hook himself, should really be arrested. So these are particularly, interesting times, as always.
Hesher, what he was talking about there, literally the prime minister's tweeting out, we need to get BlackRock more involved. And I think they're not even hiding it at this point. I mean, that's the extraordinary thing about having, a member of the Trilateral Commission as your new prime minister, a fully ranking globalist at the WEF level, Trilateral Commission level, basically saying we need more help from BlackRock. That's the solution. Pretty extraordinary. I'm not.
Well, the extraordinary thing is as well that
I thought that was when I saw it.
I know the extraordinary thing is that people still talk about him as being a socialist or somehow a prime minister of the left. People on social media, going, "Oh, this guy is a communist." I mean, he's anything but a communist, and he couldn't be further from it. Yes, he has managed to hijack the red team in Britain, which is, of course, the opposite of the red team in the United States. for his own neoliberal purposes. But he has absolutely nothing in common with the previous Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, when it comes to realpolitik or anything important. They're now talking about means testing benefits, means testing the state pension, which in England is pitifully low anyway. But there are, of course, a lot of well-off older people, but they feel that when they paid their national insurance stamp, they're entitled to a state pension as much as anybody else. And circumstances can always change. But no, they want to means test the state pension. That's coming down the line. Huge crackdown on benefits coming, no talk of taxing billionaires or anything like that. I mean, people have got real buyer's regret with this government, more so than ever before. They're currently polling in the low 20% in terms of popular vote,
Yeah, well, I think in many ways Keir Starmer makes the Tories look like sort of neo-Marxists on a certain level.
Yeah.
The alienation of the working class by Labour is just something
Yes.
to behold.
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives were supposed to have some sort of patricional feeling of benefaction towards the working classes who they were happy to exploit, but nevertheless felt some sort of obligation, noblesse oblige, people used to call it, for looking after the working classes. These technocratic neoliberals are completely divorced from any meaningful political philosophy or ideology, or indeed any morality. They've got no qualms about who they crush. But, well, the British economy will be crushed, if not by Starmer, by Donald Trump, apparently. If Starmer, and they have made noises that they will do so, although, of course, it'll never come to pass, if the UK helps arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, this is getting particularly interesting, particularly Senator Lindsey Graham, who said in the week that the US should sanction any country, Canada, Britain, France, old allies like that, anyone who plays a part in Netanyahu's arrest. And Tom Cotton went even further, the senator for Arkansas, and suggested invading Holland.
Oh, that's not going to happen. The U.S. is not going to invade the Netherlands, but there's in the minds of the neoconservative, it's plausible to them just because they passed the Hague Invasion Act back in, I forgot who was president. Hesher, I don't know if you saw Lindsey Graham draw that really bold, not red line, more like a pink line there, threatening, no pun intended, threatening all of our allies if they don't back off of his buddy Netanyahu. So this is like the International Criminal Court. Most of the world signed to their own statute, Hesher. What's Lindsey playing at here? Or is he just playing to what he thinks is the hardcore peanut gallery?
I think probably the latter. The hardcore peanut gallery seems to be where all the energy is going. They want to treat people that are anti-war for any reason as though they are leftists now, which I find absolutely hilarious. No one on the right, the left, the center, the independents, the libertarians, people don't feel that way by and large. I mean, Conservative Inc. is really popular on X, and I think a lot of people are going to have to really take a hard look at themselves, or they're going to have to double down on these talking points, in particular with what's going on in the Middle East. So Lindsey Graham is going to be one of the biggest vocal mouthpieces for that, and it's absolutely insane. And that's what Basil was saying about Starmer. It's kind of like, it made me think about Kamala Harris in her debate with Trump, shouting out Goldman Sachs. Like, what is that? Could you imagine if a Democratic candidate for president in 2003, like 4, let's just go, and even 10 years ago, had said that? I mean, the larger contingent of quote unquote liberals or Democrats here in the United States would have laughed her off the stage, and they would have said, we're the 99%. What are you talking about? But now we live in a world where someone like her, or anyone on the left for that matter, and I can make similar criticisms of Trump and Con Inc. at this point too, will say, yeah, yes, we want more BlackRock. Those guys that are buying up all the housing markets and they now own houses and sell them on the cheap or rent them all out. The one of the three biggest companies in the world that is at the core of the octopus of consolidating resources for the globalist deep state, for lack of better terms. We want them. Great, cool. Let's get that Cheney guy on our team too. Remember how cool Dick Cheney is, guys? I mean, can you believe this stuff? What happened to the left?
Well, don't say octopus. That could be deemed as anti-Semitic. So be very careful.
Oh, right.
What's the animal you use for metaphors? But speaking of the octopus.
Well, speaking of Stop Anti-Semitism has named its top 10 and finalists for 2024 Anti-Semite of the Year. This just within the last couple of hours or so.
Can you read some of the nominees and just get us warmed up for the big announcement? The drum roll.
Corey Bush.
Corey Bush. Okay.
Jake Shields.
Jake Shields, the MMA fighter. He's based.
Bassem Youssef, the Egyptian comedian.
I love Bassem Youssef.
I'm going up the food chain here deliberately. Jackson Hinkle.
Jackson, oh my gosh, the human mem.
Dan Bilzerian,
the Elvis of Twitter. Okay, go ahead.
Dan Bilzerian, doubtless predictable.
Dan Bilzerian, who's a total G, by the way. These are all the coolest. Not all.
And then now we're getting to the big celebrities. Candace Owens.
Candace, I've got such love for Candace after what she posted this week.
Mhm.
I mean, this woman, a woman with a big heart and who cares about humanity. There's nothing more attractive than that.
She did great work as well in the build-up to the election, exposing Kamala Harris's blackface lie. Harris published this book about her life, featuring photographs of her with an elderly woman of African extraction, shall we say, claiming that this woman was her grandfather. But Candace did a bit of digging, digging, and discovered this woman wasn't her grandmother at all. The whole thing was a big deception to make Kamala look blacker than she really is. Unbelievable stuff. Her grandmother was a white Irish woman. Anyway,
we're digressing. Get back to the list.
Two left. Here are the biggest names. John Cusack.
John Cusack. He's what? Is he number 2?
He's in the top 10 finalists.
So John Cusack, who is a absolute hardcore on the left, but John Cusack and I have absolute convergence of positions on Israel and Palestine. He has been an absolute warrior. We might disagree on Russia, Ukraine, or some other things like that, but which is very brave in Hollywood, Basil. You have to admit.
Oh, I know.
To go against Israel in the way that John Cusack takes a big pair of balls, and he's got them. And I got so much respect for this guy.
And finally, Greta Thunberg.
Greta, that's a surprise. I mean, she's a dark horse in that list, isn't it? Who saw that coming? I didn't see that coming.
So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jake Shields has reposted it. I'm surprised Stu Peters didn't make the list. Jake Shields has reposted it with the comment, "This is a massive honor, and hopefully I'll win Anti-Semite of 2024."
Have they not given the award out yet? Are they?
No, it's yet to come. Those are the 10 finalists. 2 others are Jess Natal and Hassan Piker.
Hassan Piker, I'm not sure, but you out of that list, who do you guys like? Who do you think is going to win? Firstly, and why do you like them, Hesher?
I think Greta might win, but I think Candace Owens should get that spotlight. It's strange that we're talking about this as though it's a badge of honor, but at this point, like, people that support those people, if there's a open voting, they might want to go vote for them just so that they can boost their message. I mean, this is one of those things where those that are trying to spin this narrative that if you're anti-war or if you're critical of Israel, that you're you're not allowed to have that opinion because it means you're a hater. It means you racially hate someone, which is utterly ridiculous. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know if they're doing themselves any favors with this list.
Huge street
Well, no,
cred
absolutely.
if you win this honor. Basil, who are you picking?
Well, if the organization Stop Anti-Semitism have some internal caucusing process for picking the winner eventually in order to sort of cause maximum publicity, I would imagine they would go for one of the bigger celebrities like John Cusack or Greta Thunberg, because it'll garner more headlines, but at the same time it'll make them seem absolutely ridiculous, because the idea that John Cusack or Greta Thunberg, for no reason at all, have over the last couple of years just sort of developed this irrational hatred for all Jewish people is ridiculous. So that the whole thing, frankly, makes the whole charge of anti-Semitism increasingly idiotic.
Well, I'm gonna add to that. I noticed on that list is very glaringly there's omissions. It's all Gentiles, and
Yes, that's a good point.
The biggest voices in America, the loudest and most, I dare say, most effective voices against Israel, Zionism, and in defense of the human rights of the Palestinian people are in fact Jewish Americans. Okay, so let's drop a second list. We'll call it the Anti-Semitic Lifetime Achievement Award, and I will nominate who I think would be the winner. And this is a badge of honor. We're being satirical here, folks. We're being cynical. The street cred that comes with awards like this, you cannot calculate in terms of social media impressions or followers. Norman Finkelstein, I would put at the top of that list. Boom. So, Lifetime Achievement Award. I would call it the Abe Foxman Lifetime Achievement Award if you really wanted to lop on the cynicism there. But
well, there are plenty of other good candidates from the American or indeed British Jewish community. From the UK, of course, we've got Tony Greenstein, Miko Peled from Israel, Medea Benjamin, Aaron Marte and Max Blumenthal from the Grey Zone. It's quite a lengthy list.
All powerhouses, as far as I'm concerned, and not just on this issue, on other issues too. So these are legitimate political, geopolitical.
Benjamin Rubenstein,
Ben Rubenstein. There's too many to count. So yeah, without them, they provide, they do a lot of the heavy lifting in the independent media and punditry as well. So I love personally watching Norman Finkelstein on Piers Morgan and some of these programs, just destroying these guys when they're trying to tackle him and he can't be tackled. He's probably one of the best debaters. I marvel at his debate skills. Actually, he's unbelievable. Candace Owens, for that initial list, she said she put out. I should try to put this video up. I don't know if I can or not now, but she said she put out this video on social media. She said that anybody that's been backing this doesn't deserve to be serving in the White House. I mean, that's a good chunk of Trump's cabinet. Here's one of them. We'll talk about cabinet picks. Sebastian Gorka. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll be Donald Trump's leading policy director for counterterrorism and security issues. Again, I'm Sebastian Gorka. So this guy, straight out of a Dos Equis advert, could have walked off the set of Fantasy Island, the 1970s Fantasy Island with Ricardo Montalban. You know what I'm talking about. Hesher, what do you think of this guy? You know, the thing that really pisses me off, beside the fact that he's a complete charlatan and a complete chancer and a con man as far as his bona fides goes personally, is that he took the name America First for his radio talk show. I mean, you can't own that. You know, it's like it's like if he said my syndicated shows could be Make America Great, or America First. People who do that. There's another guy, I forgot his name. He took the term alternative media television. He just like owned it, which you can't own that and say that you are America first or whatever. It's just when people who do that, a huge red flag pops up. But what do you think of Seb Gorka? I mean, Donald Trump picking this guy, he's been thoroughly discredited within his sphere of expertise. Hesher, go ahead.
Yeah, like so many of these cabinet picks, it's just like, what are you doing? What is actually going on here right now? This guy, no, absolutely not. The Zio factor in the cabinet picks is
off the chart.
glaring. It's glaring. It's glowing. It's neon. It's radioactive, and it literally radioactive.
It's a lot of people are basically insinuating that Jared Kushner is picking he's qualifying all of these picks, anything to do with foreign policy or that touches or grazes foreign policy or intelligence, that it has to have the Kushner, his son-in-law's stamp of approval on that. Howard Lutnick is the transition team director from Cantor Fitzgerald. He's another one working closely with Kushner on the cabinet picks. So at every front, I think so far the biggest beneficiary of all of these picks so far is a foreign government. Am I exaggerating, Basil?
Not in the slightest. And they represent a very significant and worrying, or perhaps important, necessary change from previous US foreign policy, which of course was to pay lip service to the fabled two-state solution, which was just a way of kicking the can down the road while more Palestinians are slaughtered and more land is stolen. Of course, it's worth remembering, of course, that conditions in Gaza are as bad as they've ever been, if not worse. Now going into a second winter of the Gaza Holocaust, torrential rain, more arrogant orders to evacuate northern Gaza while it's being simultaneously shelled, 90 people killed today, etc. But you're now dealing with the likes of the former Arkansas governor Mike Huckabee, and if he gets confirmed, Hesketh, and the national security advisor, with people who do not believe there is an occupation of the West Bank, that all of historic Palestine belongs to Israel. People who come out with the sort of extreme Zionist garbage about, well, there are lots of other Arab countries they can go to. They should go to Jordan. They should go to Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the Palestinians here. They should go to Egypt. They should just get out of Israel, period. That is the new policy. It may well be that Trump gives the green light for the theft. Don't use the term annexation. You have an annex in a hotel. This is the theft of the West Bank and Gaza. Every chance that he'll green light that. So this will really put the Europeans and indeed the rest of the world on the spot, because Europe, of course, continues to pay lip service to the two-state solution. But if Israel steals the West Bank and Gaza, then where exactly is the Palestinian state? And will Europe finally act against Israel after decades of sitting on its hands? So maybe things have to get worse before they get better, but certainly from these picks so far, things are going to get a lot worse, not only in the Middle East, but also at home, of course, because Trump's decided that if you speak out against genocide, then you are a supporter of Hamas. That's going to be the new line. I mean, it may end up going to the Supreme Court, but that woman, Elise Stefanik, taking over as US ambassador to the United Nations, has been, she was a real Israel firster. She went to a big conference in Israel, got given some stupid medal or something. People diametrically opposed to any kind of vocal or material support for Palestinians in the face of what the ICC, ICJ now determine are international war crimes and genocide. So really extraordinary position that the United States has painted itself into. The result of decades of bribery, blackmail, and all the rest of it. AIPAC continued to crow on social media about how they get all their candidates elected, because I've heard most MAGA supporters are not Israel firsters. Of course not. Most Americans are not Israel firsters. But the money, the ownership of the news networks, the bribery of candidates, the the way anybody standing for Congress or the Senate who is not an Israel firster finds themselves carpet bombed by negative ads paid for by the lobby. So you end up with this situation with the government taking a position that's contrary to the interests of the United States, as well as being fundamentally immoral and endangering the whole so-called rules-based order that they crow about so much.
Patrick, you're muted.
Hello,
Sorry.
Patrick.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we got Mike Waltz, who's the National Security Advisor, his deputy assistant, Alex Wong, big Bush advisor, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, guy, complete, big hawk on China. Of course, that's the China hawk in there. They've got, and there's a few others that you mentioned. Pete Hegseth, which Trump pulled off of Fox Weekend host. I mean, he's not even a mainline Fox anchor. He's like a weekend host, does the morning show. Defense secretary, he's got no experience. Oh, but he's a combat vet. Where was he deployed? He was a reservist, I think, from the state of Minnesota or something. He was first deployed to operations in Guantanamo Bay, basically lording over Afghan taxi drivers, school teachers, and goat herders in the offshore torture facility. So that's the beginning. Did a couple of deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. To what end? Who knows? He's got a couple of awards, but let's face it, folks, Afghanistan and Iraq are two massive debacles, not anything glowing on anybody's CV at this point, if we consider both of those places and what abject failures they were. Then he's appointing Sebastian Gorka for security policy. Gorka, I don't know what his qualifications really are, other than he does love the sound of his own voice. So he's got that going for him. And there's the other one that this is the real kicker, guys. Hesher, I want to get your comment. I don't know if you noticed who Trump was tapping to head the U.S. Treasury, named Scott Bessent, who basically is George Soros's fund manager.
Yep.
He's a big Soros guy. I mean, so what is this about drain the swamp? What is this about, we need to keep the globalists out? So in between Fox talk show hosts, which occupy at least 3 cabinet positions by my count, then you've got Soros guys, then you've got Cheney and Bush guys, and you've got all sorts of. Pete Hegseth is a Third Temple red heifer cultist. He wants to knock down Al-Aqsa and build the Third Temple.
That's
bring
right.
in the red heifers, and so this is like what's shaping up here. Granted, some of these people may be qualified. Pam Bondi, who's replacing
Matt
Gaetz for Attorney General. She is completely pro the anti-Semitism speech bill and a whole bunch of other things. What is she but a corporate lobbyist? So all the swamp people were applauding her appointment like it was a great thing. So that's the AG. It seems like we've been set up, and I haven't heard anything from Steve Bannon. I mean, Roger Stone's gone against some of these appointments himself. Anyway, follow Michael Tracy, who's, I think, a very objective journalist by anybody's standards these days. He's covered these cabinet appointments really well. If you go to his Twitter feed, Michael Tracy, good journalist and not partisan. He might seem to lean left or something like that, but in terms of his reporting, he's pretty much straight down the middle. But you guys, Hesher, it doesn't look good.
No, it's not looking good. I mean, look at the ZOA network, right? The Zionist organization of America. This so Huckabee, Levin, Prager, Bannon, Beck, Stefanik, Rubio, Newsmax founder Lee Zeldin, the Speaker of the House, Speaker Johnson. You know, it's amazing how many of these people can be seen hanging out at the ZOA. Gorka, I got pictures of Gorka hanging out there, speaking there. Dr. Oz, I got a picture of Dr. Oz here sitting there with the one and only Rabbi Buttplug Shmuley. There you go. I mean, it's just a cast of characters here. And when it came to the Treasury guy, well, here comes BlackRock again. We got BlackRock's Larry Fink. It's been contracted by the Trump team to help search for a proper Treasury secretary, and that's what you get. So
I just want to insert a caveat when Hesher mentioned Rabbi Shmuley with that pejorative. It wasn't just a pejorative. He does sell sex toys.
Yeah.
So that's
factual.
That's his family business. So
yeah,
I need to put that on record, Hesher.
Right. Yeah, I didn't mean it as a quite literal pejorative. It's just factual. I would reference you to the aforementioned candidate for best anti-Semite. I mean, worst anti-Semite, Candace Owens, because she certainly leans into that factor of his business and family life. But it is a fact. And that kind of begs a lot of questions and leads down a whole nother rabbit hole that we won't go into on this show. But yeah, I mean, BlackRock involved there with the Treasury person. And let me, you mentioned Trump talking about this idea of anti-Semitism. And remember, I'm going to read a quote from Trump here. But remember that he campaigned on freedom of speech, right? And this was a big one for a lot of people because a lot of people have been censored. But here's what he said, quote, "My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support." End quote. So the free speech guy is talking about defunding universities for what? For what exactly? And then, if I may, also, I have one more big bone to pick. Actually, I've got a stack of them here. But Susie Wiles, Trump's top campaign advisor and new chief of staff, was the Duval County, Florida co-chair for John McCain's 2008 campaign and co-chair of Mitt Romney's 2012 Florida campaign. That's a big one. And then there was Elise Stefanik, of course, but there was one that really had my goat, and it was the COVIDian aspect. I don't have the woman's name in front of me right now, but you've got people being promoted right now that were proponents of lockdowns and said that the jabs were a gift from God. Are you kidding me? Like, that's the biggest hang up. That's one, aside from the Zio factor, that is and probably should be the biggest hang up that people with common sense could have with Donald Trump, Mr. Father of the jab, father of warp speed, all that stuff. You've got blinders on. And Trump had such a big opportunity to save lives. All he had to do was say, we made a mistake. Don't take these products, or pause these products, or I'm going to send RFK Jr. into the FDA and remove the emergency use authorizations. There's so many things that he could have done, even to softball that. But what's happening right now looks like we're being set up for a double down on the pandemic industrial complex.
Yeah. I wish they had invented warp speed, i.e., faster than light FTL drive space travel. We only wish, but instead it wasn't. It was just a really shitty vaccine. But let me bring over on screen here, and let me see if this. I don't know. We don't have it to hand, but so the ICC indictment. Arrest warrant of Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, who's the defense minister there. I mean, that's That's a big game changer, because you can ignore it. You can say, oh, we don't recognize the ICC. You can have Lindsey Graham drawing his pink lines everywhere, kicking and screaming, and other people saying we need to attack or sanction our any allies that try to enforce this warrant. But it's a game changer in that that's the majority of the world has recognized and will abide by and will enforce that arrest warrant, which means Netanyahu cannot travel to any of these countries, period. He could go to the United States. He's probably safe there. But he might even have trouble in Canada, because
Trudeau
they're
said he would
so,
arrest
no,
him.
just briefly, they're so married to the ICC and proud of the fact that they're signatories to the Rome Statute, and they loved issuing a warrant for Vladimir Putin for war crimes which we can't quite discern what they actually were. And here we have an active genocide case in the International Courts of Justice, led by that was ordered by Benjamin Netanyahu against the Palestinian people. I mean, this is as good as a case as you will ever get, that has ever been filed. So Basil, not easy to do the travel itinerary for Bibi's office these days, is it?
No, I mean, it is bizarre when you think about it. It was only a few months ago that he was being, applauded with all these standing ovations in Congress. That gives you an idea of just how divorced from reality Capitol Hill has become, how divorced it is from public opinion, not just public opinion, but, judicial opinion. This is the whole point. That you can't just dismiss the ICC as a politicized body. It's been very carefully constructed over decades and is very deliberate in its findings. And Karim Khan isn't the one who issued these warrants, by the way. It was a panel of judges, and I mean, we hope that it's the turning of the tide. I mean, there's going to be a lot more of these warrants to other members of the Israeli government and Israeli military, possibly right down to individual soldiers, as well as the other Western governments that have been complicit. I mean, the British government have said that they will arrest Netanyahu. We've finally had a statement. So it's being speculated on X that this petition to have a general election that's now garnered over 1 million signatures just happened to start immediately after Britain said it would arrest Netanyahu. And therefore, it may well be a Zionist-inspired move. People say it's Reform that has started this initiative. There's also this thing going around called the Pledge, and that Farage is simply acting on Trump's orders. This is a first shot across the bows of the British government, over this matter. It's nothing to do with winter fuel payments or COVID or any of the other disasters that Starmer has created. I thought that was an interesting point. But yes, it does mean that Netanyahu is increasingly isolated on the world stage, can't go to any of these countries, although Germany, of course, in a bizarre statement said that because of its Nazi past, it couldn't arrest Netanyahu. I mean, let's talk about
that doesn't make that's just so counterintuitive. So Germany's saying because of its Nazi past that it can't arrest
the perpetrator of genocide because they're Jewish. So people have been asking, there've been one or two little interviews on social media and things challenging people who say or who agree with Netanyahu and say that the arrest warrants are anti-Semitic and all the rest of it, by saying, is there anything at all that Israelis leaders could do that would justify, that would warrant their being arrested? Slaughtering 200,000 people isn't enough. Maybe they slaughtered 1 million. Would that then be enough? Because it's obviously a totally irrational and indefensible position, because you're effectively saying that this particular group of people have some kind of permanent immunity from any kind of international prosecution.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Hesher, what do you think about this? I mean, a lot of people are just, going to ignore it, going to sort of, move around it, disparage it, but it's not nothing, actually. Reality is sinking in. I know it's slow, but I think it's a big move. What do you think?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, public opinion is a lot more malleable now when it comes to how we think, as people in the West, citizens in the West, how we think about Israel and Israeli policy. I can't even call it foreign policy. How we feel, you know what I mean? Like there was a time a few years ago when I would mention something, a current event that had to do with Israel or a policy that Israel was doing that was affecting people, or the amount of money that our taxpayer dollars that go there regularly. And I would just get that look like I had two heads. Like, you can't say that, not necessarily here in our media sphere, but in my personal life. I've lost friends over bringing this topic up before, and now that this is where it is, and we have so many people dead and so many lives destroyed, and this land basically cleared out, and Jared Kushner and his buddies sitting there, wringing their fingers at what they can do with this land. And on top of that, accelerating and expanding into Lebanon. I mean, this is a PR disaster for a country and a group of political operators and globalist operators, that is the veil has sort of dropped, and now all of a sudden people are talking about it. People that 5 years ago, heck, even 2.5 years ago, would not look at it because they didn't want to feel like I felt when I would say that, like, I've got two heads. You know what I mean? And it's like, we've had people on this show years ago, like Gilad Atzmon as a regular here. And people in the chat are mentioning the books of E. Michael Jones. Like, there are people out here that have been saying this for a long time and have suffered the social and media ramification of them voicing their experience, their opinions, their research. And I think that now we're at a point where all of this doubling down, and in particular, being very critical of Trump and his selections right now, it's not a good look, and they're losing people from both sides of the political aisle here as far as the public support for these sort of talking points.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of it's timing. It's like you'd get roundly attacked for voicing certain ideas or opinions. I think Basil has interviewed many times Tony Hall, who is a academic from Canada, who's one of the most canceled people in Canadian history. But now he could say the same things and they can't cancel you because everybody is saying them. So it's just become so obvious, the level of injustice and the absolute disregard for human life by the Israeli government, by the U.S. government, by supplying all the arms to them, by the UK as well, who are facilitating the arming of Israel, who are there's more evidence. It's the most well documented genocide in history. Usually it takes years and years, witness statements, going through documents, all lawyers and so forth to try to build up a case for genocide. Rwanda is an example as well. Something that you can prosecute, something that sticks. This was all done in real time because the IDF posted half the evidence on their TikTok channels.
Yeah.
They're so proud of destroying schools, universities, homes, picking off kids, either snipers or with drones, just for sport. And it's just unbelievable. So, I mean, people are getting a real look at the real extreme horror. And some people it's registering with them. They realize this is really bad. A whole bunch of other people, though, and I think a minority personally, are basically saying, "Oh, it's perfectly okay. It's not genocide. We're not sure very many people died anyway. It could be Hamas is lying about the figures and so forth." The devastation is like on a scale never seen before. For anybody to be denying it at this point is, to me, unconscionable. Basil, go ahead.
Well, there are other people celebrating it, of course, both inside and outside Israel. The dehumanization of Palestinians in the media through Hasbara propaganda for decades has had an effect on certainly on a lot of American minds who think that Palestinians, they're just in the way. They've just got to get out of the way. They should not get out of there. It's their fault for voting for Hamas. Yes, including the children. The Israelis are God's chosen people. Remember, Christian Zionism is bizarre, fanatical nonsense. So, that there are people out there, as I say, who have that perspective. Starmer, of course, argued back in 2014 that Serbia committed genocide against Croatia, particularly with the bombing of Vukovar and other things. This is when he was masquerading as a human rights lawyer. Whatever Serbia did to Croatia was basically done with a pea shooter, was the equivalent of throwing a few stones compared to what Israel has done to Gaza. But of course, when he was asked in Parliament the other day, he refused to acknowledge it was genocide. That's because he himself is an accomplice. So this global constitutional crisis is just getting ever, deeper and deeper.
Guys, we're going to wrap up this program. It's been a great overdrive segment. There's a lot of stuff we could be talking about here. I want to give the floor to each of you to air out any issues or any stories that we should be paying attention to, and also give a shout out to what you're going to be doing this week. But I'll give you the floor first. Hesher, go ahead.
Yeah. The name I was looking for earlier, Trump's pick for Surgeon General, Dr. Jeanette Neswat, who claimed that COVID vaccines were a gift from God. Okay. That would stop you from dying. Okay. Another quote, "This is our path out of the pandemic." It's just amazing. Here it is. "We have many vaccines in existence that treat a variety of non-life threatening diseases, but to have a COVID vaccine, i.e. a Pfizer or Moderna mRNA that will actually save you from dying, is a gift from God." That
the holy vaccine.
Yeah, that, my friends, is maybe the biggest insult. Like, if I could just set the Zio factor aside for a second, for me, that is one of the biggest insults of this whole round of cabinet stuff, and it's hard to set aside what's happening right now.
A lot of my MAGA, colleagues and friends and so forth, saying to me in back channels, you're being a little bit hard on the Trump administration. They haven't got in yet. These are just nominations and so forth. I'm sorry, but you've had 4 years to think about and to gather a list of names, and you want to get the highest quality people, not people that are thoroughly discredited because of their past failing positions and taking absolutely the wrong stance on stuff, have been demonstrably proven to be wrong. You don't reward them. But I see these people being rewarded somehow by this administration. It makes me really question the competency regarding people and policy. And I have to point it out. There's nothing more patriotic than wanting to get the best out of your government. I'm sorry, but that's my viewpoint. So we are going to be heavily critical, especially when it's a clown show, and you appointing Sebastian Gorka as your head of security policy. That's clown world.
Yeah,
That's pure clown world. That you're not a serious administration. You're not running a serious foreign policy team. To bring in a guy like that is I don't know what he said that's of any value, that is just not some trope that's been cherry picked off some extremist right wing talk radio show, or off of some of the sort of dredging segments of Fox News. I don't see anything. He might quote von Clausewitz once in a while, which sort of makes him appear intelligent, but this guy is just completely ridiculous. Anyway, why not leave them to languish in the media? Why bring them into the White House? This is my question. It's not as if there's not excuse me, but John Mearsheimer, Douglas McGregor, are these sort of people that are not capable, that are cognitively impaired? compared to some of these guys that you selected here. I mean, defense. Pete Hegseth, a weekend host at Fox, is a defense minister in charge of the Pentagon. Okay, yeah, perfectly normal. Perfectly normal.
Have you guys noticed how when we look at all these names, a vast majority of them, or at least a high percentage of them, are maybe not the first thing on their vitae, maybe the second, maybe the third, is influencer. A lot of these people are huge podcasters or mainstream media pundits, and I find that to be a little bit disturbing in and of itself, because it's like, what's the tactic here? Because admittedly, I give Trump and RFK Jr. a lot of credit for going on podcasts and using those platforms, in particular Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, a few others, to elevate themselves and make their opinions known and their personalities understood to an extent, their public personality understood to a much wider and younger audience. But it's like, they're talking about what's his face, the ex Secret Service guy who's huge on Rumble.
Dan Bongino.
Yeah, they're talking about Bongino for Secret Service president, for example.
Well, that's not a bad pick, actually, because that's his job. He's worked on, he knows that whole thing inside and out.
Yeah,
I would pick Dan Bongino if I was president to be in charge of a Secret Service, but that there's competency there.
Yes. So he's sort of the one that stands out among all these, influencers, podcasters, pundits, whatever. Like, he has the skills and he's smart, and, you could kind of see him in that position. But all these other names, what the actual foxtrot is going on here? Is that, and I mean, I kind of think this is sort of the setting the stage for what future power politics is going to look like. It's going to be packed with people that are influencers, because the influencer factor is more important than policy at this point, because what's most important to global government is narrative management. And if you have influencers, if you pack this thing with influencers that are already, bought off, that are already foreign agents, hashtag foreign agents, shout out to Odd Man Out. He's doing a great job for us, cataloging all these people on his social medias. That's the big gain. It's just a matter of time till, it's Elon Musk versus, whoever, or Barron Trump versus, Don Jr. versus Zuckerberg or something. We're moving into they're shuffling off the old guard, the old liberals and the old conservatives. That's all going to go away. It doesn't really fit in the next two generations of voting blocks. So it's going to be internet influencers, majority, and all of them are people that have built their names on top of the concept of MAGA. But what do we get when they get there? Is we get Israel first.
Yeah, we get Israel first. We get globalists first. We get the bankers first.
Technocracy first. Digital IDs
first. Meanwhile, Elon's tweeting out semi-pornographic memes. And trolling people. I know it's funny that he's going to buy MSNBC. I find that to be highly ironic, and I love watching Rachel Maddow break down live on air. That gives
crying over a meme.
It gives me great pleasure. But you can't really be taken seriously if you're putting out those memes, Elon, because it's beside the fact it's very low class. It shows sort of a low level of political acumen for somebody that's supposedly in such an important position of responsibility, like it's it's a big meme game. And for a lot of these people, it is a big meme game. This is how they communicate. And I love Theo Vaughn. Seems like a good bloke, but I don't want him in the cabinet.
Yes,
I don't want him running a department. I love Patrick Bet David talking about insurance and cryptocurrency, and but I don't want Pat Bet David running the Treasury Department. But with Trump, this is sort of what you get. So he's just, if they're not on, or Fox News or podcasters are next. Then we're into the idiocracy at that point. Then it's like, give me Terry Crews for president. That's what I want. I want Terry. Let's just cut with the BS. Terry Crews for president. Terry, your country is calling you for the greatest role of your life. Be our Zelensky in America, please, Terry.
Well,
Make the idiocracy come true. Calling out Terry Crews. I know
Make
you're out there.
idiocracy great again
I
and
know you're
start
out there,
Israel.
Terry. We want you.
the Guardian Observer are running a piece today saying that we should take Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson seriously as a future president.
Makes sense. You know, WWF, WEF, wrestler, actor, totally qualified.
Trump picked Linda McMahon. What qualification does Vince McMahon's wife have to be in the cabinet? I mean, this is absolutely, like, when I saw that, I was like, holy crap. Like, one of the biggest documentaries on Netflix right now, it's a docuseries, is about Vince McMahon, and it ends with him essentially being sorry, Vince, but a total degenerate, womanizer, like lawsuits against him, all that kind of stuff, which of course, a lot of lawfare going around, all that garbage. But I mean, when you watch that whole thing, it's just like, wow. And you meet Linda in that docuseries, and it's just like, wait a minute, what? Like, why? She's a billionaire. Yeah, they made billions of dollars with WWE, but it's literally like all the memes that have been, we've been using WWE as a metaphor for power politics for years. Like, it should be, I would think that would be a verboten decision that says something about what we're seeing right now.
Wrestling, or Dana White, he's an MME guy, and so they're great guys. Dana, Vince, the great guys, friends of mine, good people.
Mike Tyson fighting a YouTuber in a fight that looks like it was thrown. I mean, we've got so many examples of this stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly. Who's going to fight Jake Paul next? Is George Foreman still alive?
I don't know, man.
Yes, he's still alive. Yeah, absolutely. But I
I'd
don't
like
think
to
he's
see Jake Paul fight George Foreman.
There we go.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe
For
Lennox
money.
Lewis. Maybe
3 rounds, 2 minutes a round. And I want to see that. I want to see George Foreman put him into the waffle iron. Give him the waffle iron and the rabbit punch. So it's just absolute clown world. I don't even want to get into that. It's ridiculous.
I don't either. And somehow I just have to throw this in there for our MAGA friends that are mad at us out there right now. I'm still glad it's not a Kamala Harris administration that we're going into. I'm cool with that. I'm my big thing, and I've told you guys this before on air, I was mostly interested in watching the Democrats lose. That is still a win. Watching them lose is a win, sort of, but it's a really one you really got to be careful with, because then it's like, well, it's starting to look like Trump was the selection all along. And if that's the case, and these are the cabinet picks, and these are the things that these people have said, done, been funded by, will do, are we being set up here in a worse way than bad picks? Are we being set up for him to be the guy that's in charge during World War III, during Pandemic 2.0, during Cyber Polygon, during
Pandemic 2.0?
Right? Well, yeah.
They can try it. Ain't going to happen. But lastly, I do echo your sentiments, Hesher, of course. Basil, which is worse, a biological male beating up on a woman in a boxing ring, or Jake Paul beating up on an old elderly man? I'm not saying Mike Tyson's old and elderly, but at 58, not exactly a spring chicken.
I was disappointed with Tyson. I must admit, I thought he might be able to land one of his famous uppercuts or hooks on Jake Paul. I'd like to see that. He was punching the bag very hard, but unfortunately it didn't materialize. No doubt, biological males beating up women.
I wonder if Jake Paul's people paid off Tyson to throw the fight.
I think Paul got $40 million. Yeah, I think Jake Paul got $40 million, so I don't think he really needed to. I mean, extraordinary sum of money for a circus act, really.
Yeah, I mean, but it'll be a career ender if you got knocked out by somebody who's retired. Anyway, oh God, it's just crazy. But Basil, final thoughts before we say sayonara this week with the Sunday Wire.
Well, the Observer seems to be living in some kind of cloud cuckoo land. It suggests in an editorial today, it's effectively the Sunday Guardian, that Netanyahu should voluntarily surrender to the ICC and fight their case. My goodness, I think I've got about as much chance being elected Prime Minister of Israel as of that happening, because they would lose and they would end up in jail. But it would be nice if they did so, wouldn't it? So let's all end up on the optimistic note that they're going to hand themselves in.
Yeah, that's the ne'er-do-well Observer newspaper, which is I heard it's going to get purchased by Tortoise Media. Tortoise Media, which is
Well, there's some great opportunities out there. You know, MSNBC is being sold off, Patrick. Perhaps we should get a consortium together to bid for it.
I think so. I think this would be a good home for you. I think definitely a rebrand, a revamp for sure. I would keep a few people on the current MSNBC roster for no other reason than to torture them live on air. Bring them on as pundits, grill them, torture them, but like lock them, handcuff them with a contract that they can't, because they're unemployable anyway. So if they leave, as Don Lemon showed, there is no career after CNN. Nobody is interested in watching his podcast.
No.
He thought he was going to blow up on X, and now he's left X ceremoniously. I am announcing I'm leaving X. They all
Nobody
do it.
cares. All
They
these
all
people
do
leave
it.
it. Go, just go. Nobody cares. You know.
Ellen
They're all going
DeGeneres
they're
has
all going to
announced she's
something called
leaving
Blue
the
Sky.
United States. She's going to be going down to Dorset, apparently. She's got a house in Dorset with her partner, Rossi, Miss Rossi. She's so upset about Donald Trump winning. She's left America. There's a lot of Americans that are very happy about this, that they won't be seeing Ellen DeGeneres anymore. Maybe she'll do a podcast. Who's going to watch it or listen to it? There's something about the gravitas of the mainstream broadcast studio, the distribution, all of the oomph behind you when you have a show on the mainstream, and then you take them out of the mainstream system, and nobody's interested. It shows you they've been force-fed down the throats of people for years, these people. And they're taking in, 5, 10, 20 million a year for a subpar content that nobody actually likes, but just likes to vegetate on the sofa in front of the TV. Anyway, that's the mainstream drama, the ballad of the mainstream media. It's the lament. Basil Valentine, really appreciate you joining us on the Sunday Wire this week. Basil is one of the great political. Go ahead.
Thank you. The Pulse, my home, we're off air at the moment, but hopefully we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, keep an eye on the Pulse. That is the Phoenix, which will rise out of the ashes of TNT Radio, hopefully soon. But Hesher, Bryan McClain, where can we find you this week on ACR?
Hey, thanks for having me, you guys. Great show. You can find me on X at Hesher Media, and you can find all other things me at alternatecurrentradio.com. That's where you'll find all the show posts. We got a show post up there right now for today's show, so please get out there and repost that, or grab the link from 21st Century Wire's YouTube channel and post that. We really appreciate that, because like we said, we're fighting these algorithms and on special lists of people that don't get boosted, or so it helps when you share the stuff. And big appreciation for everybody in our Discord chat. There's always such great commentary. Same with the 21stcenturywire.com chat, the YouTube chat, and all the places where you find this show. We really appreciate you guys throwing in and chatting. And of course, another big, giant, warm blanket hug to everybody that has contributed to 21stcenturywire.com and Alternate Current Radio. We are more listener supported now than we have been in a couple years, and I would just like to congratulate you, Patrick, on the award you've been nominated for. This is absolutely amazing and well-deserved. The Serena Shim Award for Uncompromised Integrity in Journalism. Absolutely amazing. So congratulations. And we at 21 Wire and ACR, we've provided this service almost as basically as a public service for over a decade.
Yeah.
And when we got outside employment with TNT, we took a lot of those resources that we were able to make through our blood, sweat, and tears, 30 interviews a week in my position, and put that back into these platforms. And now we're back in a situation where the listener support is really, really important, and it really helps out a lot. So for those of you that have joined 21wire.tv or dropped anything in the swear jar at ACR, thank you very much. That's going right back into the platforms, and it makes us able to do what we do. So if you've done that, we really, really appreciate it, really need it. And if you're thinking about doing it, it's a good time.
Yeah, Winter Fundraising Drive. We just launched it this week, as we normally do at the end of November every year. This is the most important fundraising drive for 21 Wire, and it helps right across the board. We're able to fund independent journalism, like the work of people like Iara Modarelli, as well as our great journalists like Freddie Ponton and people like this. All of this stuff are viral videos that you've seen going wild on TikTok and Instagram, and also on Twitter and Telegram. That's because we have a social media team now. And so all of this stuff costs money, as does the security and hosting of our website, which is huge in terms of our archives and the sort of information that's held on there for, again, as a public service. So we need your support now than ever, folks. Really appreciate it. PayPal, credit card, crypto. We pretty much will take any sort of form of payment, and we really appreciate any support you can give. We'll be shouting this out as well, but just go to 21stcenturywire.com, hit donate or support us, and you'll be able to see these pages, and you can immediately get involved and become a member at 21wire.tv. Subscribe monthly. That's also the preferred way which you can help us, hopefully. But if you want to throw a donation in there as well, we need it. Definitely, we need it. And we're doing as much as we can with very little resources, folks, but making a big impact. And as I said earlier, this is our biggest stories are coming. They're coming. We've done some great work in the past, but our biggest stories are ahead of us. We'll be there, and we'll be leading the way on some of the biggest stories in the world. And we'll be breaking some of the biggest stories in the world as well. And we'll do that with your help. You guys, our listeners, you guys are at the center of all of it. You drive this media platform. So we really appreciate it. We wouldn't be here without you, period. As well as the other platforms that we've worked and helped develop and launch. It's really because of what we've done here at 21st Century Wire and at ACR, Alternate Current Radio. We've been able to contribute so much around the independent media sphere. And again, I'll echo and agree with everything Hesher said. And we've been able to develop so much here through your support. So, and again, appreciate you guys. Thank you, Hesher. Thank you, Basil. It's been real. We're going to be wrapping this episode of the Sunday Wire up. That's 524 of this weekly Omnibus News and Analysis radio program. And again, a big shout out to Iara Modarelli, and what a fantastic report on the ground, breaking what I think is a massive story, the Valencia Flood Scandal, cover-ups, corruption, and political failures. If you missed any of this live stream, go back and watch it afterwards. The first hour is Iara's report on the Valencia Flood scandals. It's absolutely incredible. The detail in here is unbelievable. The exposures are something else, and there's more to come. She's going to do a follow-up report on that as well. So there will be more coming. But thank you guys again for joining us, and to everybody out there, take care. All the best.
In the final analysis, we all have had small planet, and we are all mortal.
Lately I've been watching the world gone mad. Brothers and sisters full to take a stand, to hate their fellow man, another man. Divide and conquer is the acronym plan. Distract the people, control the story. Don't believe your lying eyes, you know me. Stay in power no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. Corruption and lies. Truth is the crime, will turn to gold. Well-designed misery to keep you on edge, make you believe anything anyone says. Keep it left or right, not top or bottom. Accuse the victim, can't you see we got 'em? Stay in power no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. We've captured rights. Feudals our time will turn to dust. Industrialized brutality, commercialized cruelty, people as commodity, cheer on war atrocity, no accountability, perpetual impunity, always have an enemy, the hell of all humanity. Stay in power no matter what, playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. Stay in power, cash in the stars. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and join the cause. Pushing us to turn to good. An empire of lies. History rhymes will turn to dust. Digital inmates, scored on every move. Nowhere to hide, nothing to hold on to. Turn to dust, as we turn to dust, as we turn to dust.
Supervised contact. They watch our every move. They examine our togetherness like we've got something to prove. I've looked behind your eyes. I've seen the sadness you hide. I've looked into your eyes, I've seen the tears that you've cried. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. In the legal arena, absurd theaters are staged. She moves in circles, her cruel games cause delays. From the questions you ask me, like why can't you come home tonight? From the moment you hold me, it's the shortest hour of my life. No, I won't get used to these chains. I wanna tell you what I'm feeling, I wanna tell you what I know. Someday the truth will know. I wanna tell you what I'm feeling, I wanna tell you what I know. Someday the truth will flow. Restricted freedoms, they say I've gotta be careful with what I say. Their conspiracy of silence, they think the truth will lead you astray. They say that they're here for you, but they never listen to what you say. They've built walls between us, I will walk through walls to break these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains.